let's get you out of your book slump. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anthea, and in today's video, as you must have seen in the title, we are going to go through some tips on how to get you out of your book slump. So, without further ado, grab your hot drink. I have my tea, and we're going to just get straight into it. Now, tip number one is to read something that you are familiar with, whether that is a book or a series that you have read countless times, or maybe it's a particular author that you really like their writing style. Whatever it is, whatever that familiarity means to you, just read that particular book. So for me, it is Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. This is obviously a series that is absolutely beloved by many people around the world. I had grown up reading these books, and I know all the ins and outs about the characters, about the story, the plot twist, plot line, the world itself. So I am very familiar with that world. So whenever I get into a book slump, I would direct myself into reading that series again, because it's a book that doesn't require much brain power, because I already know what's going to happen. I already know the characters. I don't need to worry whether I'm going to like that particular book or not, because I already know that I'm going to like it. Therefore, reading that again would get me, personally, be able to get me out of that book slump, because I'm already familiar with the world and I don't have to worry about what is going to happen. And also, when you are familiar with a book itself, and especially if you decide to listen to it on an audiobook, you don't really have to concentrate too much. It's just in the background, and I always really enjoyed that. So that is tip number one. Read something that you are familiar with already. So tip number two that I have for you guys is to DNF books. DNF, just do it. If you read a book and you find that you are not enjoying it, it's much better to stop reading it than it is to push yourself to read that book and try to finish it. I think a lot of us, we tend to try to complete a book even though we're just not gelling with it. In case you're not aware what DNF is, it's basically did not finish. It was just a book that just didn't gel with you and you just stopped reading it. Now for me, I have tried to force myself to read a particular book. I tried to read it 3, 4, 5 times. I just kept trying to restart it, thinking that I'm going to love it. It's a fantasy book. They've made a show out of it. Like, I'm going to love this book. That book was American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman, also absolutely amazing writer, very popular author. He's written some amazing books. So I was thinking, I'm gonna love this book. But unfortunately, it just didn't gel with me. But I couldn't accept that. I just didn't want to accept that I couldn't finish off American Gods. And to me, I felt really annoyed with myself. I felt really disappointed. And ultimately, that just put me into a book slump. I just felt, if I'm not gonna be able to finish this book, I'm not gonna read any other books. I'm not gonna read any other books until I finish this book. And that put me in a massive book slump. So I think, if that was to happen again to me, I'll just DNF it. Even if it's reading first 20 pages, 30 pages, whatever it is, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not gelling with this book. It's not for me. Whatever it is, just DNF it. And that's absolutely fine. And I think a lot of us don't want to DNF a book because we feel like we spent a lot of money on it. We're spending time on this. I don't want to have wasted my time on this book, and I would feel like I wasted my time if I DNF it. That's not the case. That is not the case at all. I think a lot of us would need to realize that spending time reading a book that you're not actually enjoying is more of a time wasting period than it is to just DNF it, And when it comes to feeling as if you have wasted your money on a book, that actually leads me on to tip number 3, which is to sample the book first. Sample the book first before you actually purchase the book. So on the Kindle app, you can sample books. I don't really know how many pages they actually allow you to read at the beginning, maybe like 20-ish 30 pages. I don't really know, to be honest, but the Kindle app allows you to sample a book before you actually purchase it. So that, you know, it's a really good idea just to test it out, see if you enjoy the author's writing before you actually purchase the book. And with Kindle, you don't have to actually have the Kindle reader. You can just download the Kindle app, which is free, and then read it on your phone, your iPad, whatever it is. So you can do that and test it out before you actually buy the book itself. So tip number 4 is to scrap that TBR that you have for this month. If you are like me and you are a mood reader, don't do TBRs. TBRs are to be reads, so they are usually a list that you would put together of books that you really want to read for that month. Now that works for some people. You know, they like to have that list. They like to take it off once they have read it, you know, feel a bit of accomplishment that you've managed to read it for that month. And for me, yes, I do like to take it off. I do like to do that. But as a massive mood reader, it doesn't really work for me. And if I find that out of the 5 or 6 books on my TBR list, I've only managed to read one of them, even though I've read 5 or 6 books this month, I've only managed to tick off one from that particular list, it makes me feel a bit like, oh no, you know, I didn't actually get to meet that challenge. And that can sometimes put me in a bit of a book slump, kind of feeling a bit like, oh, if I didn't meet that challenge, that list, I don't really feel like reading. Or maybe it's, oh, I really want to complete that list, and therefore I'm gonna read those books on my list even if I don't feel like it. And that would ultimately possibly put you in a book slump. And you know, having your TBR list isn't supposed to put you in a book slump. So if you feel like you are like me and you are a massive mood reader, don't worry about the TBR. Don't do it. I know that a lot of people on social media, a lot of people on BookTube, they have those TBR lists and it's really fun to watch. But if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, and that's absolutely fine. And you know, you don't need one. I absolutely don't need one. You don't need a TBR list. Just read what you want to read. Read what you feel like reading. Tea break. So tip number 5 is to read books in different formats. So what I mean by that is, with books, there are different ways that you can read it. You can obviously read the physical. You can read it on your e-reader. You can listen to it as an audiobook. So those are all like different ways that you could try and do that maybe you've not done before. Maybe you have always been a physical book reader and you love the feel of the book and the smell of it as well, and having, you know, being snuggled up under your covers and just reading that book, and you love the feel of it, but now you're in a book slump. So that doesn't work anymore because you don't really want to open that book anymore. You don't really want to touch it. You don't really want to, like, it just seems like a chore. So why don't you just change the format of that book? You know, maybe you change and download an audiobook and try that and see how that goes. Or maybe you do have an e-reader and you download that book and you just click away on your e-reader, on your Kindle, whatever it is, and maybe that works out for you. So there's always ways like that to just change the way that you actually read and see how that works out for you, because maybe it just depends on your mood, on how you want to read your book. Give it a go, give it a try, even if you've not done it before. And along with that, you know, different formats of a book, you could also try reading graphic novels. Graphic novels, you know, comics, mangas, manhwa, whatever it is. Graphic novels are visual books, right? They have the pictures, the dialogue, and it's really quick read. It's really quick. You almost don't need to use, again, much brain power because the visualization, it's already in the pages. So those can also be a great way to get yourself into reading again, but not having to worry about, oh, I'm gonna have to really concentrate on the books. Of course, there are some graphic novels that are quite complex, but you know, you can always have a look online, research a bit, see what is a good graphic novel to get yourself into, that's quite simple, light-hearted, that kind of stuff to get you back into reading and get out of that book slump. So tip number 6 I have is to take a bit of a break from social media. In particular, social media that revolves around books, whether that is Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is. It might be worth just taking a bit of a break from that, especially if you consume it on a daily basis. Now, the reason that I say this is because with social media, with BookTube, with BookTok, there is so much of it where they go through different challenges. They go through all of the 10s and 20s of books that they've read in a month. They go through book hauls, like massive books that they have bought in that 1 week or whatever it is. And as entertaining as it is, as amazing as those videos are, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, and it can feel almost like, well, I'm not doing those things. I feel a bit like meh, a bit crap with reading my own books. I've only read 1 or 2. Is a bit crap compared to these people. And obviously that's not the case. We all read at our own pace. We all enjoy different books. And you also need to remember that for those people who are doing this full time, that is their job. And for us, we're doing it as a hobby. So we should remember that for us, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves either, and we should just enjoy the book, enjoy the moment, enjoy the story, enjoy the world, and just enjoy it, and just, you know, slow down a bit. I think that's another thing as well. Just slow down a bit and don't worry about the numbers. Oh, how many pages have I read today? How many hours have I read today? Like, you don't need to worry about that. All you need to think is, am I enjoying this book? Oh, I am? Brilliant. I'll just carry on reading it. Am I enjoying this book? No? Okay, then maybe I'll put it down. Maybe I have a bit of a rest and I'll put it down. And I feel that, like I mentioned, just sometimes social media, it can make us feel like we should be able to do X, Y, and Z, read X amount of hours a day. And that's not always great, right? So I feel like, you know, this one it can be a bit personal. It can be, you know, whether some people can feel, actually, no, for me, you know, watching these people read their books and doing the challenges makes me want to do it and brings me out of a book club, and that's absolutely fine as well. If that works for you, brilliant, perfect, great. But if it doesn't, and if you feel like actually it kind of brings your mood down a bit, makes you not really want to read a book anymore, maybe it's time to just avoid that side of social media for a little while, until you feel a bit better, a bit ready for consuming that again, and hopefully that would get you back into reading and out of your book slump. Now, tip number 7, this is less of a getting you out of a book slump and more of a possibly avoiding a book slump. And this tip is to mix it up a bit with your genres that you tend to read. And what I mean by this is read a different genre in between your favorites, just to have a bit of a brain palette cleanser, if you will. So for me personally, I absolutely love fantasy books. I live and breathe fantasy novels. I absolutely adore them. I love the world building. I love all the characters, the politics, all of that stuff. That is right up my street. But sometimes with fantasies, it can be quite long, can be quite a long series. Those books can be thick. Looking at you, Brandon Sanderson. And it can be quite overwhelming. So if you were to go from one fantasy to another fantasy to then another fantasy, that can be a lot, right? So for me, what I would tend to do is when I feel like I'm about to hit that wall, quite mentally fatigued from that book, I would then read a completely different genre, and that would help me to have that bit of a, like I mentioned, a brain palette cleanser. So if you are like myself and you absolutely love fantasy books, it might be that after 1 or 2 fantasy books, you throw in a thriller or you throw in a contemporary fiction, just to give yourself that break, that pause, you know? Or maybe you love romance novels, but you find that actually I kind of want to change the pace a bit now. You can pick up a sci-fi. You can pick up, again, contemporary fiction, fantasy, thriller, mystery, historical fiction, urban fantasy, whatever it is, you know, pick up a different genre so that you can have your own bit of a cleanser, and then you can always then get right back into your favorite genre again, just to avoid a bit of a possible book slump. So my final tip, or I guess final advice for you guys, is that if you are in a book slump, that's okay. You know, that's absolutely fine. If you don't want to read a book, whether that is the day, the week, several weeks, several months, the whole year, whatever it is, if you don't want to read a book, you don't have to. Don't force yourself. You know, that's the worst thing that you could do, is to actually force yourself to read a book. You don't want to do that. So if you don't want to read a book and you're really not feeling it, that's absolutely fine. The books are not going anywhere. They are always going to be there to welcome you home, in their story, in their world, with the same characters, with the same lovely, amazing, annoying, frustrating characters that we all love. So don't you worry, you take that break that you need. The book community will always be here to welcome you back when you're ready. So don't worry, just take your time and have fun. That's the most important thing about reading books, is that you need to have fun, you need to enjoy. So that's it. That is all the different tips that I have for you guys. I hope that one or two of them will help. I hope that it will help you get you out of that book slump. And thank you guys so much for sticking around and watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya!